So I'm just going to share with you what are some strategies for success? So we're all in agreement, right? That physical activity, it's important. It's important for the physical component, but also for that fostering that sense of belonging that we want to bring out. And again, I don't think I've ever been anywhere in the number of years that I've been working with the Alliance and getting the chance to travel, nationally and do in-person sessions for schools and districts. I haven't had anyone say, gosh, on this physical activity idea, it's a really bad idea, right? Everyone always agrees that it's a great idea. But then when we see it coming out in practice, what does it look like? And why do some schools kind of struggle in this area? And, so what are some strategies to think about as we kind of look at this concept of increasing, getting more people engaged again, whether that be students or whether that be adults? So kind of just a one word of caution, one size doesn't really fit all. I can't just, send you back to your school site or your work environment with this PowerPoint and some notes and think that everything's going to be okay. It really is about making something that's truly yours and that fits your environment and fits the culture of your school that's already in place and the interests and the needs of your participants or your students or the support that's in place. And I think that's okay because it's going to look different. And I think that's what makes it unique is because there's lots of opportunities out there, but it really takes people to get it done. It takes ideas, and the support piece of it is huge. Here's your three kind of strategies. I think the first step is you really have to look internally at your environment. You have to think about the relationship piece of it. Is that in place? Is that something that I need to work on in order to get that deeper sense of engagement, more commitment from my audience? And then this new concept, not necessarily new, but it has been well received. I've done several things around, increasing student engagement, around student-centered physical activity programming, a physical education program that's really kind of resonated well ever since I presented the concept last year at the Shape National Conference. And it's really about this idea about how can we take a look at students, how can we take a look at our participants and make sure that they have some input, that we're giving them some pathways, some mechanisms for them to have their voice heard, for them to have some built-in choices and really appeal to things that they like. And one of the activities that I love to do is to, have adults think about the Olympics that's coming up during the summer that's going to be in Paris. And that if I had to assign them to an Olympic sport, an Olympic event, compared to them getting to choose one, what are those differences? How did they feel? And, a lot of interesting things, come out from adults when they say, gosh, I really felt uncomfortable when you assigned me to be part of the breakdancing team, which is actually going to be an Olympic sport this year for the first time, versus getting the opportunity to choose my event. And then when I ask them, okay, why'd you choose it? And then what do you think comes up? Well, I've had success in it. I've got previous experience in it. I'm good at it. But how often do we get that type of information from the young people or from the other adults that we work with? So let's just take a look at the environment component of it. And it's hard to knock down walls, build more space. Okay. Educators are the ultimate flexibility professionals because we really have to do the best we can with what we got in many instances. But if you take a look around your environment, what is it? Where is that physical space? Where is it at? Is it something that I want to do outside? Do I have some vacant classroom or an office? If I'm trying to get started with a staff well-being or employee wellness program, is it the teacher's lounge? What is it and where is it? And how can I utilize, that space? And a great resource, and we'll share these resources out in the follow-up, but that I've utilized with a lot of school districts is a resource mapping toolkit and really getting them to think about their own environment, but not just the school environment. What do they have around them? We talk about community engagement piece of it. Where are the parks at? Where are the recreation components at? Where are kids going on the weekends? And what are they participating in? Is there a strong parks and rec department? Is there some type of leagues and offerings that they have? And if they really think about it, how can I make connections then in order to, one, strengthen what I have going on in my programming, but then also how can I pull those community resources into my school environment and to make use of those as well? Another one that has been very popular is this guide to building staff relaxation zones. And I think the most interesting thing about this is that this guide could be utilized. You could just underline staff relaxation zone and replace it with something else. If you want to create, employee exercise room, some type of physical activity space, I think the strategies and the tools in this toolkit would definitely serve you well. And I'll talk about a couple of those in a minute. But that was environment. Now, what about the relationship piece of it? We know that it's important that we take a look at, what are the needs of our students? What are the needs of our participants? What are their interests? What's their previous experience? What are they currently engaged in? So how can I make, more peer-to-peer relationship building with folks that I work with in my setting? And then if I work with kids, how can I improve the teacher student aspect of it? And probably one of my favorite videos that has played back when the kind of in-person learning piece started, or where we were at with the pandemic, was the teachers that were coming up with the different greetings, the different handshakes, the fist bumps to meet students at the door and really set the tone. And I just love that concept of, kids are showing up from all different types of situations and they're coming into your classroom. How can I be proactive and take that, initiative and come up with something, where I'm getting to have those students and interact with them, ask them, hey, how are you doing today? Say something positive about them, and, have them come up with a unique handshake or a dance or something that you can do. And I was, talking to a middle school teacher who had this up at their gymnasium entrance, and the students would come up and they would slap, on the wall where he had the little sign of, did they want to do a dance? Did they want a handshake, a fist bump, an elbow bump, a hug, whatever it was? And I said, yeah, I said, that's, probably a lot easier at the elementary level than at the secondary level, because I spent my whole time, my whole career was spent teaching at the secondary level. When I first became an administrator, they put me at a small elementary school, and I quickly realized that it's totally two different environments, right? I would walk outside and there's little people hugging me on the knees and all these different things going on that we necessarily didn't see at the secondary level. But I knew, quickly that, you know, those little kindergartners, they got off the bus. They didn't know what physical education was. They didn't know what recess was, or physical activity in the classroom, but they loved it, right? They loved the movement piece. The physical education teacher was a superstar on campus. And how can we take that and, harness that? Where do kids start losing that love of movement at? And I think that's something, if we could answer, we could probably make a lot of money together. But I think building, those teacher student relationships go so far, and helping students feel comfortable in that environment. We talked about creating that safe environment where they feel comfortable to move and to participate. And I think that's a big piece of it. How can I engage families? The active schools, and I was part of the Let's Move Active Schools initiatives many years ago. And they started with the take a family to physical education night that went on, I think, in February or March. But I could do that, at the beginning of the school year. I could get families involved in my physical activity programming before school, after school. I could do it before school at an open house type of event where they get the opportunity to interact with a physical education program, with some type of movement initiative that I have at my school. And again, we mentioned the community piece of it, which I think is so important. Being able to, how powerful is that, that if a student leaves and they're participating in a physical activity program on the weekend, they're hearing a lot of the same messaging, a lot of the same structures, a lot of the same routines that are happening in their school and their physical activity program. I mentioned the resource that I shared with you about building those staff relaxation zones, and this is a component of it. And we see a lot of schools that build, the staff relaxation zone, the employee wellness room. They call it a lot of different things, but I thought this was a great example of how the physical can link in with the social piece of it, and also with that mental health piece of it. So stations are great because I could take some limited space. I could set up some stations. But if I thought about, maybe I had, for an employee wellness room, I had a exercise bike or a treadmill would be my exercise station. But then I could also take and have a station that's a why wall, and having your colleagues put down, why they're there. What's their shared purpose? Are they doing it because of the physical benefit? Is it the stress reduction piece of it? But so motivating to post this on the why wall, and your colleagues read, why others are there participating in the physical activity. Again, translates into students as well. I could use this in my physical education program. I could use it in my classroom when I integrate movement. So why wall, certainly very motivating and reflecting on that shared purpose. And also thought about appreciation station is a great one as well. Before I leave, I just put a little note to one of my colleagues about something that, I'm grateful for, having the opportunity to work with them. And again, how powerful that gratitude practices are that tie in with that, decreasing anxiety, decreasing depression. So thinking about this last strategy, the voice choice component of it. And again, you could fill in student voice choice, participant voice choice, but it's really about giving folks that sense of ownership. So, it's an educational strategy. It's been around, it's part of personalized learning, it's part of student centered. It shows up in a lot of different educational initiative. But really, when you think about, okay, well, it's that expression of values, the opinions, the perspectives of the students or participants that are involved in my programming. And, how can I take these and make some actionable steps around it, so I know I'm taking that information and my students know that I've made some decisions around it. It's a Reflection activities are a great way to kind of build this into your programming. Asking folks, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what do you want to see more of, what do you want to see less of, and taking those kind of concepts and getting them more involved. And I think goal setting is certainly, very important, very powerful tool that's a part of that voice. And the thing about it, you have to be more intentional, with these strategies. And, like the teacher that I was talking about that was building that at the elementary school. And I said, okay, well, how would you transition that to the middle school level? And he said, these types of strategies are taught, they're not just caught. So we can't take it for granted that, the young people that come to me every day are learning, how to shake hands or look someone in the eye, or, receive a compliment or give a compliment, or be able to reach out to one of their peers and say, thank you. So we really have to be a little bit intentional in teaching these types of strategies. With the goal setting piece, we have a Smarty goal setting worksheet as well. Goal setting is probably being taught at your school site somewhere, but again, it's opportunity to track progress. And I think there's two components of this. It's really the individual piece of it, but then also it's the programmatic piece of it. So maybe I'm in charge of a staff well-being program that I'm trying to set up, or I'm trying to get something started at my school or district site. And I could set some goals around what do I want it to look at, what I want it to look like, and I could use a tool like this. So when we think about favorite physical activity, if we were to stop right now and said go outside or go into another room or participate in some type of physical activity right now, what would it be? What would you participate in right now if you had the opportunity just to jump up and go do something? Simple types of activities that don't require a lot of equipment, don't require a lot of space, don't require a lot of time. And when I think about, capturing that voice, giving people the chance to have that sense of voice, maybe it's a simple survey that, I ask them, what are their three favorite physical activities? What are their three least favorite physical activities? Maybe it's a checklist. After I've done my resource mapping, I say, okay, here's all the things that I could offer in physical activity. Check your favorite five. So it could be the form of some type of technology survey. Maybe it's a staff wellness event. 5Ks have been popular in the past, but a word of caution about the events is that it needs to be sustainable. Maybe you use the event as kind of the motivational piece to get folks involved, but there's kind of some lead up, and then there's some afterwards component of it, so it's more sustainable. Maybe it's some type of ongoing campaign. So February, this month has been American Heart Health Month. So drawing attention to cardiovascular health and reducing those risk factors that go along with heart health. So, maybe it could be something like that that really kind of spurs on some ideas around increasing physical activity, at my site. And when we talk about, voice, and again, I borrowed these ideas from a couple of teachers that I saw utilizing a simple drop box where, students had the, you know, opportunity to write out something that they liked or something that they disliked. Maybe it was their favorite, activity of the day. And then also shout outs, being able to give a peer, a note that says, "Hey, really appreciate you helping me out with this. And I'm really thankful for it." And again, building in that connection between the physical component and again, that physical component as well. So when we think about, goals of physical activity, I think it's important that, again, we have to offer a variety. It can't be that one size fits all approach because we have so many different interests, so many different needs from either the youth or the adults that we work with. And it's really got to be about designing it for everybody. And it's got to be, inclusive. It's got to be for everyone. Don't forget about that fun component. And oftentimes, I shared with you that example of, why do kids lose that love of movement? If I were to ask you, you'd probably tell me maybe fifth grade, sixth grade, that kind of transitional time into the middle school years, we start seeing kids that kind of become a little bit more disinterested with physical activity. And I had a teacher once tell me that, well, I think it's just the way that we design some of our secondary programs because we lose the sight of the fun piece of it. And I think there is some truth to that. So think about not only the event piece of it, but then also how can I make it sustainable and again draw connections with the physical benefits, with those mental social benefits as well. So here's really our kind of our long-term goal. And if you look at our state standards around physical education, it always says the physically literate individual will. And it talks about developing this lifelong love of movement. Well, if that's truly going to happen, we've got to move young people from just being compliant, that they show up because they have to take it, as a required course. They have to, be involved in my classroom physical activity movement. We want to move them a little bit further along the continuum so they're more engaged. And if I'm more engaged in something, now I care about it a little more. I'm a little bit more vested into it. And then finally, becoming empowered means that, gosh, I could take all that information. Now I can go out and I can put it into practice myself because we know as adults that physical activity isn't over with just because you graduate from the 12th grade, right? We're still concerned about physical activity as adults and getting more of it into our day. But as we talked about, one of those obstacles, maybe someone doesn't have that background knowledge around physical activity. So how can I make sure that I'm equipping young people and empowering them with that information so they could take this information, they can go out and make those real world tie-ins and real world application?